Picture two separate worlds hurtling toward each other at over 500 miles per hour. One carries 312 people, homebound families, workers, pilgrims, climbing into a dark November sky above New Delhi, pointing their noses southwest toward Saudi Arabia. The other carries 37 traders, travelers, a crew from the fading edge of the former Soviet Union, descending through the same sky, toward the same airport. One air traffic controller, one narrow corridor of airspace, one frequency dot, and somewhere in the middle, a message that got lost in translation. Not metaphorically, literally. At 6:40 in the evening on November 12, 1996, over a small Indian town called Charkhi Dadri, the night sky cracked open. A Boeing 747 and an Ilyushin IL-76 found each other at 14,000 feet, and every single person aboard both planes was gone in an instant. 349 people. The deadliest mid-air collision in the history of aviation. And it didn't have to happen. To understand what went wrong above Charkhi Dadri, you first need to understand the sky above New Delhi in 1996. Most major airports operate with secondary surveillance, radar, a system that doesn't just see where an aircraft is, but interrogates its transponder to confirm its exact altitude. The difference between knowing a car is on the highway and knowing exactly which lane. Delhi didn't have that system operational yet. Controllers at the Area Control Center were working with primary radar only, a screen full of blips, no altitude readout. They had to trust that pilots were exactly where they said they were. And then there was the corridor problem. In most international airspace, arrivals and departures move through separate, parallel pathways, opposite lanes on a motorway. Around New Delhi, that wasn't possible. The Indian Air Force controlled enormous swaths of surrounding airspace, squeezing civilian aviation into a single bidirectional corridor. One lane, two directions. Opposite moving traffic sharing the same invisible road. The system worked until it didn't. Saudia Flight 763 lifted off at 6:32 p.m., right on schedule. Captain Khalid Al-Shubaili and his crew had a smooth departure. The Boeing 747 banked westward, climbing through the evening sky toward Dhahran, Saudi Arabia. Every call clean. Every instruction followed. ATC cleared them to climb to 14,000 feet. Now picture the opposite direction. Kazakhstan Airlines Flight 1907 had been airborne for hours, a charter flight from Shymkent, carrying 37 people southward in the Soviet-era Ilyushin IL-76. The crew was experienced, but they carried a challenge that would prove catastrophic. Aviation runs on English. It's not a preference, it's an international standard. But aboard Flight 1907, only one man was truly fluent, the radio operator, Igor Rep. Every instruction from Delhi ATC passed through him like a relay. Controller speaks to Rep. Rep translates. Rep tells the pilots. Pilots respond to Rep. Rep transmits back. A game of telephone. At 300 miles per hour. In the dark, Flight 1907 was cleared to descend and hold at 15,000 feet. They acknowledged the two aircraft were now converging on opposite ends of the same corridor. Controller V.K. Dutta was managing both flights' standard procedure. He issued the critical separation, Saudia 763 climbing to 14,000 feet. Kazakhstan 1907 descending to 15,000 feet. A 1,000-foot vertical buffer between them. Thin, but legal. Standard. Then Dutta passed a routine traffic advisory informing Flight 1907 that the Saudia aircraft below was climbing to 14,000 feet. That message traveled through the relay chain from Dutta's radio into Rep's headset, translated, spoken aloud in the cockpit. Somewhere in that chain, the altitude minus 14,000 feet was understood not as the other aircraft's level, but as their own. The Il-76 began to descend past 15,000 dot to 14,500 dot to 14,000 dot, then lower still. On Dudda's radar screen, there was no altitude readout. He could see the blip. He could not see it sinking. He issued another advisory, correct procedure, but without altitude confirmation. He had no idea the 1,000-foot gap he had carefully constructed was quietly erasing itself. Both aircraft entered a cloud bank. Neither crew could see the other, and neither plane carried a collision avoidance system. The technology existed, but it wasn't yet mandated for aircraft in Indian airspace. Every layer that could have caught this was either not installed, not mandated, or not yet online. The gap became nothing at approximately 6:40 p.m. Somewhere between 14,000 and 14,500 feet above the plains of Haryana, the two aircraft met in a devastating final moment. Rep spotted the altitude error just before impact. He called it out. The pilots climbed. The Saudia 747 was directly above them. People working in the fields of Charkhi Dadri looked up and saw two streaks of fire split apart and fall from the sky. Both aircraft broke apart on impact. Wreckage scattered across miles of farmland. There were no survivors. Not one. By morning, international investigation teams were on the ground. The flight data recorders were recovered. The Saudi Boeings decoded in Farnborough, England. The Kazakhstani Il-76s analyzed in Moscow. 2 boxes, 2 countries, 1 story. The Lahoti Commission, headed by Delhi High Court Judge Ramesh Chandra Lahoti, spent months untangling every thread. Their conclusion was clear. The Kazakhstani crew had failed to hold their assigned altitude. The flight data proved it. The Il-76 had drifted from 15,000 feet all the way down past 14,000. But the commission didn't stop at the pilots. Because cause is only half the story. The language barrier was central. With no direct pilot-to-controller communication, the relay chain had no safety net. If anything broke in that translation, a misheard word, a misunderstood number, there was no second layer to catch it. The commission identified 3 specific failures in crew resource management, the system by which a cockpit cross-checks itself. Those checks never fired. And behind all of it, the infrastructure that wasn't there. No altitude radar. No collision avoidance. 1 corridor, 2 directions. These weren't surprises. They were known gaps, documented, discussed, scheduled for upgrade. The secondary radar had even been ordered. It simply hadn't come online yet. The system had been waiting for something to go wrong. It finally did. What came after Charkhi Dadri reshaped the sky. Delhi's single bidirectional corridor was split, arrivals and departures given separate pathways, ending the head-on convergence that had made the disaster possible. The secondary surveillance radar was installed and activated, giving controllers the altitude data they had been flying blind without. Then came the mandate that echoed around the world. India made it compulsory for every commercial aircraft in Indian airspace to carry a Traffic Collision Avoidance System, TCAS, a device that watches the surrounding sky, calculates closing trajectories, and issues direct commands to crews before geometry becomes fatal. Climb, descend, no relay chain, no translation, no telephone game. India's decision sent a signal. Within years, TCAS became effectively universal across commercial aviation. Today, it flies on virtually every commercial aircraft on Earth. 349 people could not be saved by a device that wasn't required to be there. But every separation that has happened since, every TCAS alert that fired, every collision that didn't carries a quiet thread back to that November evening above the fields of Haryana. Aviation safety record wasn't handed down from somewhere. It was constructed layer by layer, inquiry by inquiry, out of the wreckage of the things that went wrong. Charkhi Dadri, November 12, 1996. A Boeing 747 climbing. An Ilyushin descending. One corridor. One screen with no altitude data. One chain of communication that broke at the worst possible moment. The sky above. New Delhi is different today because of what happened that evening. More layered, better equipped, designed to catch the kind of silent drift that no one on the ground could see. That doesn't make the loss smaller, but it means those 349 people, their journeys, their families. The ordinary Tuesday evening they boarded a plane and trusted the sky are woven into every safe crossing made since. Every single one.